Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 8th Annual Department of Defense Pride Month celebration. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Captain Mike Brown, a member of the DoD Pride Employee Resource Group. DoD Pride is comprised of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender civilians, military members, contractors, and allies of the LGBT community. I'm greatly honored and proud to be able to serve and support this country along with my fellow civilians and military members across the nation and around the globe. Today's event is an opportunity for the entire DoD community to come together and celebrate the great diversity of the American people and also to celebrate the enormous contributions of LGBT civilians and military members serving in defense of this great nation. In addition to our three guest speakers, Retired General Wayne Monteith, Senator Tammy Duckworth, and Mr. Stuart Milk, I'd like to welcome our other distinguished guests who are present with us today, including Lieutenant General Daniel Hokanson, Major General Tammy Smith, Brigadier General Robert Fulford, Ms. Valerie Muck, Mr. Winston Beauchamp, and Vice Air Marshal Gavin Parker. I also want to welcome the service members and defense personnel who aren't present but are viewing the ceremony on defense.gov. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors and remain standing for the national anthem by the Marine Band Brass Quartet and the invocation by Chaplain Colonel Glenn Page.
Lord, as we begin today's DoD LGBT Pride celebration, specifically remembering 50 years since Stonewall, we think of those who personally stood up and recounted and who thus made a difference for all of us today. We remember you who undergirded them with strength and hope to endure insults and acts of oppression. Whether through the personal act of coming out or by challenging the system or gradually changing it from within, whether by actively sharing their ideas with audiences around them or by quietly affecting individuals one at a time. Through all these courageous actions and so many more, every time, you brought us as a community forward, one step at a time. Some even experienced physical pain, economic devastation, social estrangement, or jeopardized a career. But these heroes braved it all. Each added their own God-given talents, words of expression, dignified existence, and dedicated heart, their focused mind and joyful smiles. In all, your persevering spirit moved them to help create the world we have today, one that more fully celebrates love and inclusion, the richness of accepting the best that each other has, and the vast and mysterious contributions of personhood, regardless of the outward markings that might cause us to appear different. Their memory is a blessing, and hopefully history will judge that our memory will be a blessing as well. Finally, we lift up to you the sacrifices of our military members, DoD civilians and contractors, and modern military families serving around the globe. Keep them safe and prospering in all that they do as they protect us and the shared values that make us great. Amen.
Please be seated. Please join me in a round of applause for the Joint Forces Color Guard and the Marine Band Brass Quintet for that wonderful rendition of the national anthem. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Rudy Coots, co-chair of DoD Pride.
Thanks, Mike. What a wonderful day here in the Pentagon. So happy you're here. I know you're all excited to hear the wonderful speakers that we have for you today, but what I'm most excited about is that you all are here. You're here showing your support for LGBT soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and DoD civilians. The fact that you are here today in this place makes a difference. It's a tangible statement to all who will see and even read about this event in the future that we value the immense contributions that LGBT service members and civilians make to our national security each and every day. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today.
Thank you, Rudy. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Wayne Monteith. General Monteith retired from the United States Air Force in December 2018 following a distinguished 29-year career. After graduating from the Air Force ROTC program at the University of New Mexico, he spent the first part of his career in the field of intercontinental ballistic missiles, including command of the Air Force's only Combat Crew Training Squadron. He had similar success in Air Force space programs, commanding the 50th Space Wing and serving as the Deputy Director of DoD's Executive Agent for Space. His capstone command was at the head of the Air Force's 45th Space Wing and Director of the Eastern Range, where he led over 15,000 personnel responsible for launching more than 25 U.S. government and commercial satellites per year from Cape Canaveral, Florida. He also served as a senior military assistant to the Undersecretary of the Air Force and graduated from the National Defense University. He now serves at the Federal Aviation Administration, where he is Assistant Administrator for Commercial Space Transportation, and I understand oversaw a successful launch this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome retired General Wayne Monteith.
First off, thank you, and thank you to DoD Pride for inviting me to speak today. I was invited a few years ago and unfortunately couldn't make it, and so I'm very thankful that we were able to carve me out another slot to come before you, and it's a privilege to be a very, very small part of this important celebration. Not only does this mark the 50th anniversary of man's first steps on the moon, it also marks the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, the 8th anniversary of the effective date of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the 8th year we gather here to celebrate DoD Pride, and while some may still shake their heads in disbelief, the forever anniversary of LGBT Americans serving in our military. I am honored to be sharing the stage today with Senator Duckworth and Stuart Milk, and how appropriate it is that they are here as we recognize and celebrate courage. Courage takes many forms. In our line of work in the military, it's often associated with heroic moments in battle, singular events that freeze time, common people responding to exceptionally uncommon events in extraordinary ways. It is part and parcel of our long history. But make no mistake, courage takes place every single day. Sometimes it is overt and obvious, like the actions of a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman, or first responder when lives are on the line. But far more often, it's subtle and unseen, accomplished by ordinary people just wanting to go about their day-to-day lives with dignity. Some have the moment thrust upon them and react with valor, while others simply awake for a countless consecutive day and make the courageous decision to quietly persevere, to stand up for themselves and for others, to stand up and be recognized as the person they were born to be. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about 4 of these people, 4 friends. The first 2 of which I won't use their real names because I didn't have an opportunity to check and see if they wanted me talking about them in public. But these 4 individuals who have never met each other but have faced or have each demonstrated a remarkably similar form of courage in the face of adversity. The first we'll call John. John and I served together as lieutenants, and we pushed each other as ICBM launch officers. Some months I was the top operator in the squadron. Other months, it was John. He was one of the finest officers and people I knew, and a peerless missileer. But this was the early 90s, before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as good as John was, it would make no difference. He wasn't allowed to be both gay and serve in the military. He worked hard, much harder than most. He was fun to be around, but he was always just a little reserved. He was a patriot who loved his country and only wanted to serve this great nation. Unfortunately, and completely by chance, the Air Force discovered the truth behind his unspoken personal life, and John's world was turned upside down. People gossiped, opinions were opined, and sides were drawn. John had to come to work every single day as he continued to serve with dignity, even under the threat of court-martial, while the Air Force he loved sent him away. He served with quiet courage every single day. I remember the time vividly, not only because of what my friend and fellow officer was going through, but because I faced a momentary integrity crisis. You see, John had asked me to pen a character reference on his behalf to the United States Air Force. And I willingly did so, because it just seemed like the right thing to do. Strangely, it wasn't long before I received my first actual career counseling. As I prepared to head out to alert one morning, my commander pulled me aside and talked about my bright future, and then suggested that I should be very cautious with my signature. The advice, though misplaced, seemed well-meaning, but the implication was clear: support my friend and put my own career at risk. I signed and submitted the damn letter anyway, and my career appears to have turned out okay. But make no mistake, we discarded a phenomenal officer who would have been a phenomenal commander one day. But not surprisingly, he went on to be successful in his civilian life. He's married now, and I smile when I see posts of pictures of him and his husband on Facebook from around the world. John served with quiet courage. As a captain, I served with Bob, another phenomenal officer in person, another phenomenal friend. He served with dignity every day until one day he just got tired of telling people, like our squadron commander, that the dude living in the trailer in his driveway was just his buddy Dan. I still remember his going away remarks like it was yesterday. He explained that his life had changed, and so he needed to change as well. He didn't want to leave the Air Force, but he also didn't want to continue living a lie. He served with courage and dignity, even though he couldn't be himself and he wasn't offered dignity. He and Dan are now married and he's happy. He also served with courage. Now let's talk about Kevin, a fellow Peace Corps volunteer, friend of my daughter. They served together in a country where she wasn't supposed to be single and he wasn't allowed to be gay. They eventually became a couple, so they could both serve their 2 years without being harassed, assaulted, or for Kevin, potentially jailed for being who he was. Kevin served in a foreign country, earning scant dollars a day, helping people who wouldn't want his help if they knew he was gay. But he served our country with dignity and courage in another country that offered him neither. 5 years ago, my daughter married an Air Force officer. It was a wonderful event, mainly because half of the attendees were Air Force and the other half were Peace Corps volunteers. Two cultures that many would have us believe could never find common ground, let alone deep and lasting friendships. Kevin was actually in the wedding party. He was home, and he was once again Kevin. He was happy, successful, and decidedly gay. And he looked fabulous in his role as one of her bridesmen, actually her only bridesman. Kevin, too, lived with courage and dignity. Now let me tell you about my friend Jim, who also started serving before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but fortunately continues to serve today. I've known Jim most of my career, but I really got to know him when we served together when I was a squadron commander. Jim was and still is a reservist, and at the time, my senior civilian. DADT was still very much in effect, and we would share a good glass of wine or three and talk about his personal life and the ups and downs of his dating habits and relationships, and maybe about him making some better choices. It was always in his civilian capacity. I don't have to tell anyone here it was an unusual time in our military. Right, Jim? Jim served every single day with dignity and courage. And while I have no proof, I'm convinced he was still a captain when we met, largely because of his personal life. But he continued to work hard, continued to serve with courage, and mostly continued to hide who he was until the repeal. I'm happy to say that he is now a GS-15 and recently pinned on his new rank of colonel, both of which were long overdue. But even more importantly to me, Jim can now be who he is always supposed to be. He's happy. He's in a committed and healthy relationship with Robert. And quite frankly, while he still needs to spend a little more money on his shoes, he's just a whole lot more fun to be around these days. Jim continues to serve each and every day with courage. Thanks, Jim, for hanging in and making a difference. 4 ordinary people demonstrating extraordinary courage, just living their lives and wanting nothing more than to be themselves and to be able to serve their country. None wore a cape or had special superpowers, but each a superhero in his own right. In some small way, each has left an indelible mark on those around them. Each has demonstrated quiet courage in the face of adversity. Each has made those around them just a little bit better. Wrapping up, all of us here today share something in common. We simply want to serve. We want to protect the nation that we cherish. We want to be respected for doing a decent day's work. We want to have equal opportunities because of our determination and selflessness. We want to be accepted for who we are. We want to work in organizations whose foundations are forged on an inclusive culture of dignity and respect. In our line of work, we all understand the importance of humility, of acceptance, and of kindness, even in the face of adversity and differences. And this is why I'm here, as an advocate for so many who are shuddered into silence early in their military careers, and to ensure we preserve the freedom and respect so many have fought for and died for in the past. And before we ever consider taking a single step backwards, we need to remember how damn hard it was to get where we are today. It is an honor to be with you today. God bless the women and men who serve our great nation, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, General Monteith. On behalf of the DoD Pride organization, we want you to accept this, our very first DoD Pride Challenge coin. You're the first one to receive it, sir, so thank you. Now I'm pleased to introduce our second speaker. Tammy Duckworth was elected to the United States Senate in 2016 following a highly distinguished and diverse career in the U.S. Army, as a director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, as Assistant Secretary of Veterans Affairs in the Obama administration, and a two-term representative for Illinois' 8th Congressional District. Senator Duckworth attended the University of Hawaii, received her master's degree in international affairs across the river at the George Washington University, and obtained her first PhD in political science at Northern Illinois University, and her second PhD in human services at Capella University. She served in the Army Reserve for 23 years as a helicopter pilot, and she was among the first Army women to fly combat missions during Operation Iraqi Freedom. She sustained serious injuries in 2004 when her helicopter was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, and she spent a year in recovery at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Her experience at Walter Reed made her a passionate advocate for veterans issues. This advocacy led to her Illinois and national positions in Veterans Affairs, and she has sponsored legislation in the House and Senate designed to improve veterans' mental health services, reduce suicide, and support veteran-owned small businesses. And she had another noteworthy accomplishment in 2018 when she became the first senator to give birth while serving in office, which the working parents among us can truly appreciate. Senator Duckworth, thank you for your multifaceted service, which has directly benefited a large portion of the people gathered here today, including myself. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Thank you. I think my mom wrote that introduction. Hello, everyone. Happy Pride. Happy Pride. There's nowhere else in the world I'd rather be than here with you today, honoring the heroism of those who serve and the diversity that has helped make our nation so great for so long. I was told that the theme of today's celebration is courage. Well, that's an easy one. From cadets to four-star generals, from DoD technicians to SES, you all personify courage every single day. Time after time, you've put country over self, proving what should have been obvious long ago, that who you are and who you love has no bearing on your ability to defend the country you love. And it's been 50 years to the month since hundreds of people gathered outside a tavern in New York City, refusing to be silenced, refusing to be belittled, refusing to adhere to a status quo that treated them as less than. Those 5 days of protest at Stonewall helped herald a movement that hasn't just made America a better, fairer place, but has also made our nation safer and our military stronger. Because make no mistake, our armed forces are stronger because of the people who serve, regardless of who they love. People like Tech Sergeant Leonard Matlovich, who at the age of 19 voluntarily deployed to Vietnam, enduring the horrors of Da Nang and earning a Purple Heart for his service before publicly coming out and legally challenging the military's discrimination against people like himself. Well aware of the bigotry he'd face, but convinced that it was his duty to make it easier for any gay service member to follow him. Or people like Major Margaret Witt, a decorated Air Force flight nurse who went from saving troops' lives during Desert Storm to helping end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Our nation is better off because of the sacrifices of the countless LGBTQ Americans who risked their lives for the rest of us, even while they were forced to hide a part of who they are. And this past year alone, our loved ones could sleep more soundly because of the 14,700 transgender American service members working every day to help keep all of us safe. Heroes like Captain Jennifer Peace, Lieutenant Commander Blake Drummond, Staff Sergeant Patricia King, and our Illinois' own Tech Sergeant Alexandria Holder, all of whom we're lucky to have with us here today. Leaders like Chief Warrant Officer Lindsay Mueller, who has served with honor and dignity for nearly 2 decades, who has risked her life mission after mission, day after day, for this nation that we love, but who, in her own words, now feels like this country is turning its back on her and telling her that she's now a burden, because while she chose to be an Army pilot, she just happens to be transgender. Well, I've lived my entire life, like many of you, under an oath to protect and defend this nation, first by flying helicopters and now as a senator. So keeping our nation the strongest that it can possibly be means something to me as it does to you. But the truth is, this president's transgender ban will only do the opposite. As heartless as it is dangerous, it will hamper troops' morale and hurt readiness. This ban wrecks the same kind of bigotry that once led our units to be segregated by skin color, the same kind of narrow-mindedness that keep women out of combat and silenced gay service members. They're even using the same outdated, discredited excuses, claiming that more diversity will lead to less unit cohesion, an argument that has been debunked time after time after time, including just this spring by this same administration's own Joint Chiefs. Look, 15 years ago this November, an RPG blasted through my aircraft in Iraq. And when I found myself sitting in that field where we landed a couple hundred yards from where the bad guys were jumping into their pickup trucks and headed towards us, and I was bleeding out in that aircraft, I didn't care if the guys risking their lives to save me were gay, straight, transgender, black, white, male, or female. All that mattered was the American flag on that shoulder and that they did not leave me behind. So, if you're willing to put your life on the line for this country and you can do the job, you should be able to serve, no matter who you love or how you identify. Since Japanese Americans fought for this nation even while their loved ones sat trapped in internment camps here on U.S. soil, since women refused to be grounded, smashing through glass ceilings to fly missions, delivering the aircraft needed to help topple the Nazis, since black service members risked their lives for the same country that forced their children to attend segregated schools and their families to sit at segregated lunch counters back at home, and since Perry Wilkins stood in uniform as a proud gay man refusing to be forced out of service because of who he loved, our differences have made us a more effective fighting force. Scientific research, four-star generals will tell you the same thing. When everyone looks and acts and thinks the same, you become stuck, flat-footed, insular. You lose the ability to be creative. Diversity leads to more problem solving and more success. It's a better expression of who we are as a country, of course, but it also makes us better to execute our missions downrange. So with fewer people enlisting as the years go on, and even fewer young people qualifying for military service due to various conditions, we should be celebrating every person who chooses to serve. We should be honoring the transgender service members who love this country so much they are willing to die for her. But instead, this administration is turning them away, forcing them out, and trying to erase the memory of what these Americans have done for this nation. All the lives they've saved, the missions they've completed, the good they've accomplished, and the tragedies that they have prevented. This ban was callous, but it is also dangerous. Because let's be perfectly clear, our military is the greatest the world has ever seen, not in spite of our differences, but because our different backgrounds and abilities make us stronger. Bigotry has no place downrange, and winnowing our military in this way weakens our forces and imperils our nation. Like all of you today, I love this nation. I was ready to die to defend her. I still am. But the reality is, we will never be the more perfect union our founders dreamed of until we learn to actually, truly embrace the power of our diversity as a nation. Until we stop discriminating against people simply because of who they are. Because diversity isn't just a feel-good issue for 1 month of the year. Diversity makes us smarter, it widens our perspectives, it makes us better, it shatters our assumptions, and it makes us stronger, as it both expands the talent pool that we can draw from and deepens our bonds, leading us to treat as equal those who look, love, pray, love differently than we do ourselves. From Congress to the DoD to the school PTA, no group can make a fully formed decision if women, people of color, and folks who identify as LGBTQ are not properly presented at the table. In politics, we have a saying, if you're not seated at the table, you're on the menu. And while we may live in the greatest country in the world, while we may have the most powerful military on the face of the earth, the strength of our nation does not stem solely from the size of our defense budget, which I did just vote for. No, $750 billion, guys. No, the true strength of our country lies in our values, in what we represent to the rest of the world. America is already great because America is already good. We're the nation that elected Harvey Milk, a nation where the daughter of a janitor can become the first openly gay female mayor of Chicago. We're an Army officer who'd once been silenced under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, celebrated her promotion to Brigadier General by having her wife pin her first star on her uniform. We are a nation that refuses to accept the status quo if the status quo does not accept all of us. Yes, there have been points when this union has been anything but united. And yes, we've had times when bigotry has prevailed, when we've mistreated our neighbors because of the differences between us. But time after time, we have refused to give in to that darkness. The miracle of America is that when it looks like the worst instincts are set to prevail, we come together and demand better of ourselves, of each other. Gay, straight, transgender, white, black, Asian, Latino, you name it, we speak out. We crowd outside Stonewall Inn and we march down Pennsylvania Avenue. We bend the moral arc of the universe, not waiting for anyone else to do it for us. We demand justice, fairness, equality. We show courage, and we take pride in who we are, celebrating our differences, yet always finding commonalities among us. So thank you for all that you do, for serving this nation so faithfully, for helping to make it that more perfect union, more equal union that we know it can be. Happy Pride. God bless all who wear this uniform of this great nation and their families. And always, God bless the greatest democracy on the face of the earth, the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Duckworth, both for those inspiring words, and in particular for the positive vote on the defense authorization. We do appreciate that. So please, once again, please accept a very small coin with immense gratitude. Ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker has a last name that is instantly recognizable, especially but not only in the LGBT community. Stuart Milk is the co-founder and board president of the Harvey Milk Foundation, named after his uncle and iconic civil rights leader. Stuart is a human rights activist, speaker on LGBT rights, government relations consultant, and an advocate for youth. He's a regular television commentator on LGBT rights and broader issues of human rights for both U.S. and international media outlets. In 2009, he accepted the highest civilian honor our nation can bestow, the Medal of Freedom, from President Obama on behalf of his late uncle, Harvey Milk. Today, he continues to take his uncle's message of authenticity and courage around the world with speaking engagements in over 40 states and 20 countries spanning 6 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stuart Milk.
Thank you. Thank you to, I actually do think my mom wrote that one too. So thanks to Rudy and to Captain Brown and to Colonel Page and General Monteith and Senator Tammy Duckworth for the work that you've done on this event. It's really so exciting for me to be here. I have been proud to have worked at U.S. military bases abroad and have met some of the most amazing examples of the best that America has to offer. In fact, I just came back from a trip last month in Italy where not only did I get to spend time with our service members at the Vicenza military base, but got to talk with and spend time with 200 children of our military family working at that base. And let me let you know on this Pride that our future is strong. If you heard those kids and their acceptance and their embrace of the true American spirit of the celebration of every human being, you really will feel that we have, in the last 50 years since Stonewall, achieved many of our progresses. I love the spirit of courage of today. Bravery, loyalty, country, duty, courage. That's what I think of our military. And I need to start my remarks with the fact that we also have an anniversary today. Today marks the 3rd year anniversary of one of the most horrific events that has happened in the world and certainly in this country, when gunmen went into a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, and snuffed out so much of our future generation. But in that darkness, there was tremendous light, and so I just want to mention, in remembrance of that anniversary, that one particular light. There was a young man named Isaiah Henderson who had come out to his mother that day on June 12th, 3 years ago. His mother, Brenda McCool, said, "I love you. You're perfect." He said, "I'm going to go to a nightclub for the first time tonight." And Brenda said, "I'm going to go with you to make sure you get home safe." And when the bullets started flying at the Pulse nightclub, Brenda jumped on her son, Isaiah, and took those 17 bullets, saving her son's life and giving her own courage and bravery. And some would have taken that event and have made it where one community turns against another. In fact, we had an election that year, and we had some political folks who were trying to turn the LGBT community against a minority faith. And we, as a global community, said no. And to this day, young Isaiah Henderson, rather than being hate-filled, vengeance-filled, he spends his time traveling the country, talking about why we need to celebrate everyone, including members of the Muslim community, turning an awfully hate-filled event into something that is positive and enriching, and is something that, to me, honors the courage of his mother. So the differences between tolerance and the celebration, I think of the military as one of the best examples of the important difference between those two concepts. At the Milk Foundation, we always talk against using the word tolerance as a low bar. Human beings shouldn't be tolerated. We should be celebrated. And I think we did that when we took down Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We simply said, when I said we did the first step of that when we took down Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it simply said that you would not be forced out of the military and you would be not discriminated against. And so we have in September the kneeling ceremony for the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk. That ship will begin its build in September. And I think it's important to note that my uncle was forced to resign. He has a less than honorable discharge. There's some information out there that he was honorably discharged. He wasn't. He was found in a park in San Diego where known homosexuals were known to have congregated. And Secretary of the Navy, Mabus, had given me, not only I had his DD-214, but gave me the backup. And in 21 pages of interrogation and psychological analysis and these messages of breaking up unit cohesion. I mean, it doesn't sound a little bit familiar that these terms have been lasted for 40 years, 50 years. But my uncle was forced to resign, and now the military, the U.S. Navy, is celebrating someone that was forced to resign. I think that that's an important lesson. It's an important statement, not just from yesterday, but to today. And I'll tell you, I'll let you in on a little secret. Secretary Mabus had said to me, Stuart, as the family member, you can reverse his dishonorable discharge. And I said, I don't think I want to do that. I think I want people to know when that ship travels the world that this was someone that the military had forced out for who he was. And then I got a call from the White House. We think you should change his dishonorable discharge to an honorable one. It's the first time and the only time I think I said no to President Obama, but I felt that that was very important not to do. When we had the naming ceremony on Treasure Island for the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk, according to the U.S. Navy Secretary's office, it gave them the most press, the most positive press than any naming ceremony that they've ever done. But not only did it give the Navy good press that they were moving forward and celebrating someone who they forced out because of who he loved, who he was, but it gave us hundreds of emails from around the world. So I want to share one today just to show the impact of something like a Navy ship named after an LGBT activist who was forced out. We got an email from a young 15-year-old named Khalil who had seen that we were having the naming ceremony, and he said, I'm sitting here in the port in Kuwait. My very existence is illegal. If my family knew who I was, they would have an honor killing. And I had planned my own suicide because I didn't want my family to have to go through that honor killing. But now I am sitting here waiting for the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk. I have put aside my plans to kill myself, and I have hope. That's the type of hope that my uncle dreamed of. It's the type of hope that my Navy family, my grandfather and my grandmother were both Navy veterans. My grandmother was a yeoman before women could even serve in the Navy. My uncle, most people don't probably know that when he was assassinated, he was wearing his Navy diving instructor belt. That's how strongly he felt about military service. So when I think of everything that we stand for as a nation, and when I think in particular what the military sends as a message of our nation, it's in defense of a constitution that allows at a military event members of different parties to come up here and express our disagreements even with the government. And so this is very unique. You can't do what Senator Duckworth just did, which is challenging the current administration's really misguided policy change on trans service. You couldn't do that in Cuba. You couldn't do that in North Korea. You couldn't do that in China. You couldn't do that in Venezuela. But we can do it now. Why? Because we defend our Constitution, and no one defends it stronger than the U.S. military. I want to give a gift to two members of the military community that I have become friends with, that I think represent amongst the best and the brightest and the most courageous of us. You have the coin for me? It's here? She gave it to me. Sorry. So we don't do, I've gotten military coins, so this is new, so we really haven't created a military coin, but this is our medal, and I wanted to present this to two wonderful individuals who testified before Congress, who were the recipients of the Harvey Milk Foundation's Medal of Valor just last month. So if Captain Peace and Staff Sergeant King could please come up here. Please join me in welcoming them. At that same ceremony, we had given an award to John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, who has been a strong and fierce advocate for the LGBT community. She, as a result of the coming together of those two, brought this issue up on national TV recently. I want to quote her dad, who, when this ban came up, Senator McCain, who is chairman of the Armed Services Committee, said that anybody, regardless of their gender identity, should be allowed to serve, and that he put forth legislation that would have stopped this ban cold. And he had several Republican co-sponsors of that bill. It's not a partisan issue. It should not be a partisan issue. Equality, justice, and the celebration of all of us needs to be seen as a basic human rights issue. I want to end today's talk with a question that I had just been asked, which is, if the family or if I could have ever dreamed of a day like today if my uncle could have ever dreamed of a day like today, or if I am sad that my uncle didn't get to see a day like today when his young gay nephew, once young, would be standing up at the Pentagon talking about LGBT rights, or that we would have a Navy ship named after him, the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk, or we would have these brilliant, openly LGBT service members serving our country. And my answer is always the same, that my uncle actually did get to see today. He absolutely saw today. He dreamed of each one of you who are supporting LGBT people, who are out and proud yourself. He absolutely got to see today, and you, and you, and you, and you, all of you have made my uncle's dream come true. Thank you very much.
We would be very proud and pleased if you, since we do challenge coins, if you would display this out the foundation. It would mean an immense amount to us.
Sorry, I was the first openly serving trans commander in the military in early January of 2017. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without your uncle, Harvey Milk, and the work that he's done. And that's why I wear the pin whenever I come to any event like this, so I can remember how important it is to speak out like he did. And so I want to give you this. This is the coin of the first and potentially only openly serving trans service member in the United States Army from my time as commander of the 189th Headquarters Company. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we close today's program, right on time with the sun starting to blaze, we would like to acknowledge all of the support that made this year's celebration possible. DoD Pride would like to thank the Joint Forces Color Guard, the Marine Corps Band Brass Quintet, OSD Public Affairs, OSD Legislative Affairs, OSD Graphics, Visual X, the Pentagon Building Management Office, and Army Video for all of their support in making today's event happen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's celebration and above all for supporting the DoD LGBT community in their service to the nation. Please join us for some light refreshments beyond the tents and have a pleasant afternoon.